At my family party, my grandpa smiled at me and asked how I was enjoying my apartment. He looked so proud, like he had been waiting years to see me happy in my own place. I froze because I had no idea what he was talking about. I rent a small studio apartment that barely fits me, and it's definitely nothing to be proud of. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard him, but everyone else at the table went quiet. My parents shifted in their seats, and I noticed them avoiding my eyes. The silence in the room made it clear that Grandpa hadn't just made some random mistake. He thought I had an apartment, but no one bothered to explain it to me. I laughed awkwardly and said, "What apartment?" Grandpa tilted his head like he thought I was joking. "The one we set up for you," he said. His tone was gentle, like he was reminding me of something we'd already talked about. My stomach dropped. There was no apartment set up for me. I've been working 2 jobs to afford my rent, and I've never been offered help like that. I could feel my cousins staring, waiting for me to explain. My mom finally cut in with a fake smile and told Grandpa he must be confused. She said it so quickly, like she was shutting down the whole conversation before it could go further. Grandpa nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He's old, but his memory is sharp. He doesn't forget details like that. And the way my parents avoided the subject made me feel sick inside. The rest of the party went on, but I couldn't shake the question in my head. Why would Grandpa think I had an apartment? Did he mean something else? I kept running it over and over in my mind. Everyone else laughed and talked, but I barely tasted my food. When it was finally time to leave, Grandpa hugged me and whispered that he hoped I was happy in my new place. I wanted to ask him right there what he meant, but with my parents hovering nearby, I felt trapped. Driving home, my chest was tight. I couldn't let it go. Something was off, and I knew my family was hiding something from me. My parents' nervous looks, Grandpa's confident smile, the awkward silence. It all added up to a secret I wasn't supposed to know. That night, I lay awake in my tiny studio, staring at the ceiling. The fridge hummed in the corner, the walls felt like they were closing in, and all I could think was, what apartment did Grandpa mean? Why would he believe I had one? And why did my parents look so guilty? It was the first time I realized my family might have done something behind my back, something that could change everything. After the party ended, I couldn't hold back my questions anymore. I went straight to my parents and asked them why Grandpa thought I had an apartment. My mom sighed and told me not to take his words seriously. She said he must have mixed things up, that sometimes he remembers things differently. My dad nodded along, acting like it was nothing worth talking about. Their quick dismissal made me uneasy. They didn't sound concerned. They sounded like they wanted me to stop asking. I left it alone in front of them, but the moment I got back to my own place, I couldn't stop replaying the look on Grandpa's face. He hadn't seemed confused at all. He looked proud, like he knew exactly what he was talking about. That thought kept me restless until my phone rang later that night. It was Grandpa. His voice was soft but steady. He said he wanted to check on me because I had looked shocked at the party. He asked if everything was all right with the condo. My chest tightened as I told him I didn't have any condo. Silence hung on the line before he spoke again, sounding troubled. He explained that years ago he had set money aside to buy a condo for me, so that by the time I turned 25, I would have a stable home. He said it was meant to be a gift, something to give me security while I built my life. I gripped my phone tighter, hardly able to process what I was hearing. He wasn't talking about an idea or a promise. He was talking about something real. He had trusted that the place was mine. But if that was true, then where was it? And why had I never heard about it? I asked him if he was sure, and he said he had arranged everything through my dad, who was supposed to handle the paperwork. My stomach churned as I listened. If that was the case, then my parents had known all along. They hadn't been confused earlier. They had been covering something. I told Grandpa that I'd never been given anything. He went quiet, then muttered that he didn't understand how this could have happened. I could hear the disappointment in his voice, not at me but at the situation. He said he'd look into it himself, but I could tell he was upset. After we hung up, I sat in my tiny studio with my mind racing. Everything made sense now, the nervous glances, the forced smiles. Someone had taken what was meant for me. It wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate. My chest felt heavy, but at the same time, a sharp anger started rising. Whoever had stolen that condo hadn't just taken property. They had stolen years of security from me. That night, I knew one thing for certain. The truth was hidden inside my family, and I had to find out who was behind it. I decided not to ask my parents again. They had already brushed me off, and I knew I wouldn't get the truth from them. Instead, I started talking to other relatives, slipping questions into casual conversations. I asked simple things like how everyone was doing, if they had seen Grandpa lately, and if they had heard anything about property. Most people gave me vague answers, but I paid close attention to every word. One afternoon, I was sitting with my cousin Isla. She's the kind of person who likes to gossip without realizing how much she's revealing. I kept the conversation light at first, letting her chatter about family news. Then she mentioned my sister, Marbel. Isla smiled and said Marbel was lucky to have a place of her own, something Grandpa had arranged for her. The words hit me like a punch. I froze, but I forced myself to stay calm so Isla wouldn't notice. I asked what she meant, and Isla kept talking, not realizing the weight of her slip. She said Grandpa had always wanted Marbel to be comfortable, and that's why she was set up in a condo. Isla assumed I already knew, so she didn't try to hide anything. My throat went dry, and I felt my hands tighten around my cup. Everything connected in that moment. The condo Grandpa thought was mine, the secret my parents tried to cover, the reason nobody would explain. It was all tied to Marbel. My own sister had been living in the place that was supposed to be mine. I didn't let Isla see how shaken I was. I nodded and changed the subject, but inside, I felt my chest tightening. A hot wave of betrayal spread through me. This wasn't some distant cousin or stranger who had taken advantage of Grandpa's trust. It was my sister, the person I grew up with, the one I should have been able to lean on. On the drive home, my thoughts were a storm. Every memory of sharing a room with Marbel, every family dinner, every small argument, it all felt different now. She hadn't just benefited from an accident. She had accepted something meant for me, and she had kept quiet about it all this time. I thought about the nights I struggled to pay rent, the stress of working extra shifts, the times I told my family how exhausted I was. Did Marbel ever feel guilty hearing me talk about those things while she lived in a condo that was supposed to belong to me? Or did she just enjoy the comfort and pretend it was hers to begin with? That night, I sat in silence, staring at my phone. My parents hadn't told me the truth because they knew it would point straight to Marbel. The betrayal wasn't far away. It was inside my own home. And now I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The next day, I went straight to my parents' house. They were sitting in the kitchen when I walked in, my mom stirring coffee and my dad reading the paper like nothing in the world was wrong. I sat down across from them and asked directly why Marbel was living in a condo that Grandpa had arranged for me. My mom froze for a second, then set her spoon down slowly. My dad folded his paper, but didn't meet my eyes. I pushed again, demanding the truth. Finally, my mom spoke, her voice calm but firm, like she had prepared this explanation long ago. She said Marbel was given the condo because she was about to start her life with her fiancé. According to her, Marbel needed stability more than I did. I stared at her, stunned. I asked if they were serious, if they really thought it was fair to take what was meant for me and hand it over to my sister just because she was engaged. My dad shifted uncomfortably, but eventually admitted he had handled the paperwork himself. He tried to justify it by saying he wanted to give Marbel a good foundation, that she was about to build a family and needed support. Their words made my stomach twist. They didn't sound sorry. They sounded like they believed what they did was right. I couldn't believe they were defending it, as if my needs didn't matter, as if I didn't deserve the same chance at security. I asked them if they ever thought about me working long hours, barely affording my rent, while Marbel lived comfortably in a place that wasn't hers to begin with. My mom only repeated that I was independent and would figure things out on my own. That answer cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just about the condo anymore. It was about how they saw me, as someone who didn't need help, someone they could overlook. Marbel got sympathy, and I got dismissed. I felt heat rising in my face, anger boiling in my chest. My parents had betrayed me, not just by keeping the secret, but by standing behind it. They had chosen Marbel's future over mine without hesitation. They had looked me in the eyes at that party, knowing exactly what they had done, and pretended Grandpa was the one who was confused. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my hands shaking. My mom reached out like she wanted to calm me down, but I stepped away. I told them what they did was selfish and cruel, and that this wasn't over. Neither of them tried to stop me when I walked out the door. Driving away, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The truth was clear now. They had stolen from me, and they didn't even feel guilty. I couldn't stop thinking about what my parents had admitted. The anger inside me only grew, so I decided I needed to see Grandpa face to face. I drove over to his house the next afternoon. He was sitting on the porch, reading in his old chair. When he saw me, he smiled like always, but that smile faded the moment he noticed how tense I was. I sat down across from him and told him everything without holding back. I explained what my parents had said, how they gave the condo to Marbel instead of me, and how they tried to defend it. His eyes widened, and his hands trembled slightly as he set his book down. He kept shaking his head in disbelief. He told me he never planned for Marbel to get that condo. It had always been meant for me. Years ago, he had given my dad the responsibility to handle the purchase and to make sure the property was under my name once I turned 25. He said he trusted my dad completely, never imagining he would do otherwise. Hearing that, my stomach dropped. That meant my father had knowingly betrayed both of us. Grandpa's face turned red with anger as he spoke. He said he couldn't understand how his own son could twist something so important. He repeated that the condo was never Marbel's to begin with. His voice cracked when he admitted he felt ashamed for trusting my dad with something so significant. He said he thought he was giving me a safety net, but instead, his trust had been broken by his own child. I watched him pace back and forth, muttering to himself. He kept asking why Jonah would do this, why he would take what was meant for me and hand it over to Marbel. His disappointment filled the room heavier than anything I'd ever felt before. I told him I didn't want to believe it either, but everything pointed to my dad signing the papers over to Marbel. Grandpa rubbed his forehead and sat back down, looking older than I had ever seen him. He said this wasn't just a mistake, it was betrayal. He swore he would not let it slide. Sitting there, I felt both relief and sadness. Relief that Grandpa was finally on my side, that he believed me without question. Sadness because the truth had shattered something much bigger than money or property. It had broken the bond between father and son, and it had left scars across our family. When I left his house, Grandpa's words echoed in my head. He told me he was proud of me for speaking up, but he also warned that things were about to get ugly. For the first time, I realized the fight ahead wasn't just mine. It was his too. I couldn't rest until I looked Marbel in the eye. I drove to her condo, the one that should have been mine, and rang the bell. She opened the door with a casual smile, as if nothing in the world was wrong. I stepped inside, and my chest tightened seeing the space. It was modern, spacious, everything I could never afford on my own. I didn't waste time. I asked her straight out why she was living there, why she had taken something that was supposed to belong to me. Her smile dropped, but she didn't look guilty. Instead, she leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. She told me I wouldn't have handled it properly, that I wasn't settled enough, and that she was the one who could make better use of it. I stared at her, unable to believe she was saying this so calmly. I reminded her it was never intended for her, but she shrugged, saying she deserved it more as the older sister who was about to build a family. She spoke as if it was a simple fact, like the decision was obvious. Her words cut deep, not just because of what she said, but because she truly believed she was entitled to it. The argument grew heated fast. I told her she had stolen from me, and she fired back that I should stop acting like a victim. Her tone turned cruel. She mocked me for being single, saying I had no responsibilities and nothing to show for my years. According to her, giving me the condo would have been a waste. She called me careless, even irresponsible, throwing every insult she could think of. I felt the blood rushing to my face. I tried to reason with her, to make her see how wrong this was, but she only grew harsher. She said I was jealous of her life, that I always had been. She didn't show the slightest sign of regret. To her, everything was justified, as if my struggles didn't matter at all. Standing there in that condo, listening to her tear me down, I realized there was nothing left to salvage between us. She had taken what was mine, and instead of admitting it, she decided to humiliate me. Her arrogance burned through every word. I finally turned to leave, my hands trembling with rage. As I walked out the door, she called after me with another jab, but I didn't look back. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. By the time I reached my car, my anger had turned into something sharper. It wasn't only betrayal anymore, it was fuel. She had shown me exactly who she was, and I knew this fight was far from over. I knew I couldn't just rely on words anymore. If I wanted the truth to come out, I needed something solid in my hands. So I started small. I went online and began searching through property records. It took hours of typing, filtering, and clicking through files, but eventually I found the listing for the condo. My eyes scanned the documents until I reached the deed. My heart sank when I saw Marbel's name attached to it. But something didn't feel right. The dates and signatures looked off. The more I stared, the clearer it became that it hadn't been done the way Grandpa described. I printed copies and kept digging. The next step was reaching out to Grandpa's old attorney. I wasn't sure if he would even remember me, but when I explained who I was, he agreed to meet. Sitting across from him in his office, I laid out what I had discovered. He frowned as he flipped through the pages and then pulled out some of his own files from years back. When he set them on the desk, I felt my chest tighten. There it was, proof that the condo had originally been set aside in my name. The paperwork clearly showed Grandpa's instructions. The attorney explained that my father had been given power to finalize everything. Somewhere along the way, the details had been altered. He let me look closer, and that's when I saw it. The signature. My father's handwriting, bending the deal in Marbel's favor. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had deliberately changed the ownership. The papers were undeniable evidence of manipulation. I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking slightly as the reality sank in. My own father had signed me out of something that was mine and handed it over to my sister. All the confusion, all the lies, it came down to one deliberate choice. I left the office with a folder of documents tucked tightly under my arm. As I walked to my car, a strange calmness settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't just angry, I was focused. The truth was no longer hidden behind excuses or family drama. I had it in black and white. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the folder on the passenger seat. This wasn't something I could ignore or let fade into silence. They had counted on me never asking questions, never pushing far enough to see behind their lies. But now I had everything I needed. I made a quiet promise to myself right there. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not my father, not my sister, not anyone who thought they could cheat me out of my future. They had stolen from me once. Now, I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. The next family gathering felt different the moment I walked in. Tension filled the air before a word was spoken. Grandpa had called everyone together, and nobody knew exactly why. Relatives filled the living room, chatting nervously, but I sat quietly with the folder of papers in my bag. My heart pounded, but I was ready. When everyone settled, Grandpa cleared his throat. His face was stern, nothing like the gentle man we were used to. He said there was something important that needed to be addressed, something that could no longer stay hidden. All eyes turned toward me when he motioned for me to speak. I stood, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled the papers out. I laid them on the coffee table for everyone to see. My voice stayed steady as I explained how the condo had been meant for me, how the original documents proved it, and how the signatures had been changed. I pointed to the records, showing Marbel's name where mine should have been. The room fell into stunned silence before the shouting began. My mom was the first to speak, her voice sharp as she rushed to defend Marbel. She said I was misinterpreting things, that I was stirring up drama. My dad sat rigid, his face pale, stumbling over broken sentences, unable to give a straight answer. And then Marbel exploded. She stood up, her arms crossed, spitting out excuses, claiming I was jealous and ungrateful. Her tone was vicious, every word dripping with contempt. I stayed firm, repeating only the facts. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply pointed back to the papers on the table. The proof was there, and nothing they said could erase it. The noise grew louder, family members murmuring, some gasping, some shaking their heads. Aunts whispered to each other, cousins leaned in closer. Everyone could see the evidence with their own eyes. There was no hiding anymore. Grandpa finally slammed his hand down on the arm of his chair. The room went silent instantly. His voice thundered with anger as he said the condo had always been mine, that he had trusted my father to make it right, and that trust had been broken. He called the actions shameful, saying no excuse could justify stealing from family. Marbel tried to argue, but Grandpa cut her off sharply. He turned to my parents, his disappointment heavy in every word. He said he was sickened by their choices and would not allow them to twist the truth any longer. For the first time, my mom had nothing to say. My dad hung his head silent. I looked around the room, feeling every pair of eyes on us. The truth was out, no more secrets, no more pretending. My chest ached, but there was relief in knowing the lies had been torn apart in front of everyone. After that chaotic gathering, things moved quickly. Grandpa wasted no time. He contacted his lawyer the very next morning and began fixing everything that had been twisted behind his back. He wasn't just angry, he was determined to set things right. First, he took back full control of his accounts and property matters. He no longer trusted my dad to handle anything, and he made that clear. He went through every detail with his attorney, making sure no loophole remained for anyone to exploit. The will was rewritten from scratch. Marbel, who had once been in line for a comfortable share, was cut out completely. Grandpa said she had already shown her true colors and didn't deserve another chance. He made sure I was secured in the documents, not because I asked for it, but because that had been his original plan all along. The condo was the next matter. With the evidence of forgery and the attorney's records, the case was straightforward. The documents proved the transfer had never been legitimate. It took some paperwork and official procedures, but soon enough, the fraudulent deed was overturned. My name went where it should have been from the start. When the ruling came through, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also exhaustion. It wasn't a gift anymore, it was justice. Something I should have had years ago was finally mine, but only after a battle that tore the family apart. Word spread quickly among relatives. Everyone knew the truth now, not just about the condo, but about the lies that had been told to cover it up. My dad's reputation crumbled. The man once seen as dependable was now whispered about with pity and disappointment. Marbel didn't escape either. She was no longer the admired older sister with a picture-perfect future. She was the woman who had taken what wasn't hers and gotten caught. I heard that Marbel tried to explain herself to some cousins, insisting she had done nothing wrong, but nobody believed her. The papers, the lawyer, Grandpa's fury, there was no defense left. The same people who once praised her now looked at her with disapproval. She avoided gatherings, too ashamed to face anyone. As for my parents, their silence spoke louder than anything. My mom looked broken, while my dad barely raised his eyes when I passed him. They knew what they had done, and they knew it couldn't be undone. I stood in the condo the day it was officially mine, keys in hand, the rooms echoing with quiet. It didn't feel like a victory celebration. It felt like the end of a war. The walls were clean, the space wide, but the air carried the weight of everything it had cost. They thought they had buried the truth forever, but now the truth had buried them instead. The family never looked the same after everything came out. Marbel drifted away quickly. She stopped showing up at gatherings and cut off most relatives, claiming everyone had turned against her. Bitterness clung to her, and she refused to admit she had done wrong. The condo being taken back only fueled her anger, and she carried that resentment everywhere she went. My mom tried to act as if things could somehow return to normal, but the damage was too heavy. Every conversation between us felt strained, as if there was a wall that couldn't be broken. She wanted to smooth it over, but trust doesn't grow back after it's been torn apart like that. My dad never recovered his standing. Relatives avoided his advice, and his name was tied to betrayal. He walked through rooms with his head low, and even silence around him felt like judgment. Grandpa, though, remained steady. One evening he sat with me and spoke plainly. He said he was sorry for what I had been forced to go through, that he had never wanted this kind of pain for me. He looked me in the eye and told me I had always been his pride, no matter what anyone else had done. His words didn't erase the hurt, but they carried more weight than all the excuses I had heard from others. When I finally moved into the condo, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The place was clean, untouched, waiting for me. As I set my things inside, I didn't feel like I was stepping into luxury. I felt like I was stepping into something that should have been mine all along. Every key, every wall, every corner carried the reminder of what had been hidden. But standing there, I also felt something stronger. It wasn't just about having a home. It was about reclaiming myself after being pushed aside. The betrayal had left scars, and nothing could change that. Yet as I locked the door behind me that first night, I knew the truth had won. They had tried to take my future, but in the end, all they had taken was their own honor. Do you think I was right to stand up for myself and take back what was supposed to be mine? Or should I have just let it go for the sake of keeping peace in the family? I'd love to know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy hearing stories like mine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next one.